Hello again, Sandwich. I'm Greg Anderson. Let's talk schools today, if you don't mind. We are coming up on your chance to vote for who next sits on the Sandwich School Committee, a vote you can cast on or before May 4th. There are 3 candidates that are vying for election in the school board's one unexpired one-year term. My question to you is, are you going to vote? And if so, how are you going to make that decision? Well, maybe today will help. Let's talk to one of those 3 seeking election to the school committee. Welcome, Kaleigh Adams.
Hi,
how are you?
Doing well.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
So I want you in 30 words or less, just tell me about your background. But seriously, you're a sandwich person.
I am.
Born and raised?
Not quite born. My dad was in the Air Force. So we moved here in 98. I was 7. My dad took a job at Otis, but I've been here ever since. So came up through the Oak Ridge School back when that was a K-8.
Yeah.
And then graduated from Sandwich High in 2007.
So what is your interest? And we've got a lot of things I want to ask about, but tell me what your interest is in running for school committee.
Part of it is that I really am, in my bones, just a town government nerd. But also I really love this town. Like I talked about, I've lived here nearly my entire life. My husband and I bought our home here when we got married. We're raising our kids here. Our kids are in the Sandwich School District. I have a really strong vested interest in seeing the schools and the town succeed to the best of their ability, and I want to be a part of that.
How old are your kids?
My kids are 6 and 8.
What are their names?
Annabelle and Luke. Annabelle's.
Love those names.
Thank you. So Annabelle's at the Oak Ridge School, and then Luke is at Forestdale.
So you came up in K-12. In Sandwich, and now you as a student, and now you are a parent bringing kids up through the ranks. Yeah. What is that? And many have had that experience, but what is your experience of now looking at the school system as a parent when in fact you were a student going through it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously in some ways there's a lot of nostalgia and, seeing them play on the same playgrounds that I grew up on. It's interesting to see the ways that the school has stayed the same and also the ways that it's changed. But one thing I'm still really excited about and that I hope people understand is that kids really can get a very high quality education right here in town through the public school system. And that's part of why I'm excited about the opportunity to possibly serve on school committee is making sure that the schools stay that way.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about why you're running. Obviously, you have challengers. You got 1 seat that 3 of you are running for. Do you know the other 2?
Not personally, no.
Okay. So how are you going to differentiate yourself from your challengers, or what is it that you are really focused on wanting people to know about why you should be on the school committee?
Well, one thing that I'm very, very passionate about is, I don't think it's a surprise to you that across the board nationally, school boards are increasingly becoming a very politicized and even polarized environment. And we're seeing a lot of funding go into them, and we're seeing them become sort of a battleground in a lot of ways. I don't know that people realize how increasingly rare it is that in Sandwich we currently have a board that operates cooperatively, collaboratively, and respectfully. And a really big part of what I want to bring to the table is continuing that. I think that it's easy to become very partisan, and people can get very focused on a single issue or something they're passionate about, and they have a right to do that. But ultimately, when you're sitting on school committee, it's a nonpartisan office, and I think for good reason.
So you're looking at other school committees or just your general awareness, and you say, we're not that.
Right.
And you want to keep it that way.
Exactly. And when people get focused on single issues, or when people have a specific personal agenda, things can go off the rails really quickly. And in watching the last couple of years of how our school committee operates, I really believe that everyone does a very good job at trying to set aside personal bias and really listen to the facts of situations and make wise decisions. And I really want to be a part of that tradition and help that to continue.
You served on the superintendent's search subcommittee.
Yes.
And that was in 2022, which yielded several candidates.
Yes.
And ultimately, Dr. Joe Maruszczak.
Yes.
What did you learn in that process?
So part of it was just the process of being on a committee. I was fortunate to be able to serve with a couple of sitting members on the committee and just seeing what it looks like to work through a process collaboratively. There were moments in that room where we disagreed, and sometimes, it was even, I wouldn't say heated, but, a passionate disagreement.
Yeah.
But yet we were able to come to a respectful conclusion. And ultimately, even in spite of all of the differences of opinion, I think that we came to the candidates that we put forward, I was really proud of. And I'm especially pleased with the ultimate decision to go with Dr. Maruszczak. I think he's really great for the district, and I'm excited for everything he's going to bring.
So tell me about that. Dr. Joe is...
That's much easier to say.
It is much easier to say. But he's in his first year.
Yes.
And there's a lot of attention on the superintendent in Sandwich based on some of the, we went through COVID and a lot of issues. But how do you think he's doing? And give me some specifics of some areas that you have observed about his leadership.
Yeah, so to kind of backtrack a little bit,
Sure.
So one of the things that we were, as a group, we were very excited about with him was the fact that he had been a long-standing superintendent in the Mendon-Upton district, if I recall. Mm-hmm. Again, a fact I learned during my time on that committee is that most superintendents, their tenure is around 3 years. That's the average. So for a superintendent to serve as long as he did in that district spoke to a level of commitment and also experience. And I've seen him bring exactly what we were hoping he would to the table, where he's been in a district that had a competitive charter school nearby and had a competitive tech school. And he understands what it looks like to try to keep kids in the district. Yeah. Reading through when he first came on, he put together, and I can't remember exactly what he called the document, but basically kind of taking a broad look at the district and some of what, he noticed. And I really like some of the things that he had laid out in there. And one thing in particular, and it might be a little small, but in one of the meetings, he had asked to reallocate some funds to do some TV advertising for the schools. And it's a little thing, but I think a lot of students can tell you, oh, well, this is why the tech is a good idea, or oh, this is why Sturgis is a good idea. But I don't know that many can articulate why Sandwich is a good idea. And there are a lot of really good reasons to stay in Sandwich. So I think one of the biggest things that he's brought to the table is a better communication outward on the importance and the value of staying in Sandwich and messaging to parents and families.
So let's talk about the messaging. Every month, have you heard of the show Ask the Soup?
Yes.
Okay, have you seen it?
I have. Not every episode, but...
Okay, so that is a monthly exercise of what are some of the questions that are coming up from and the superintendent has many different ways you can get in touch with them.
Yeah.
What do you think about, from a communications perspective, attendance at the school committee meetings?
Yeah.
You don't really get a lot of people showing up.
No, part of that is, they are, I'll be honest, you don't see me there. Part of that is because it's broadcast on SCTV. And so you can watch it that way. So part of it is, I wouldn't get too cynical about it, because I hope that maybe there are a lot of people like me who are watching at home. Yep. And if there isn't a pressing issue that they're very concerned about, they're watching that way. And even then, public comment is only one way to reach out to the school committee.
Right.
So I suppose I hope, maybe optimistically, that people are watching and maybe communicating with the district, with the school committee offline.
Do you feel the superintendent, the administration, not just Dr. Joe, but do you feel the school district is doing a good job of communicating out to parents and students even?
I think communication, of course, there's always ways to improve. But I will say, as a parent, I receive a weekly email from the principal at Oak Ridge, the principal at Forestdale. Dr. Joe has communicated with us. I know after what happened in Nashville, he was very quick to send an email to parents and just kind of tell them about some of the things that they're working on in Sandwich, and I appreciated that. So obviously nothing's ever going to be perfect, but I am encouraged by the steps that are being taken and the communication that they're trying to put forward at the moment. Yeah.
You mentioned a bit ago about communicating the value of the Sandwich School District, and there is choice.
Right.
Talk to me about enrollment. If we get a Kaleigh Adams sitting at that dais every school committee meeting, where is your head as it relates to talking about enrollment and getting those numbers up?
Yeah, so one thing is that I think, and rightfully so, we lose the most students between the middle school and high school years. So a lot of the focus is on the high school. And of course, there's 2 free alternatives, and so that becomes kind of a pressure point. But I think it's also worth looking at what we're doing at the elementary level, and maybe what are some of the things that are causing parents to send their children to perhaps a Montessori or a Waldorf or some of the other alternatives that way, and see what they're offering that we aren't, and look for ways that we could offer some of those same things here. Because some of those parents, when it comes to the high school, will then take their kids out of a Montessori environment and then go Sturgis or Tech, where maybe if we had looked earlier at what we could have done to keep kids in the district at a younger age, we'd be able to keep them in the district at an older age as well.
So why, Kaleigh, do you think that people are pulling their kids out of school and going to Sturgis and going to, why?
I think there's a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
At the high school level, part of it I really do think is messaging, and I don't want to paint a rosy picture that there's nothing wrong and that
Sure.
it's all just optics. But again, I think a lot of people can say, oh well, at the Tech I'm going to graduate with a trade, I'm going to have a career option right off the bat, and they see that value. Or Sturgis, they're really they push their international baccalaureate program, and people see the benefits of that. And I don't think that very many students understand the opportunities that are available to them at Sandwich High. I've mentioned it before, but I'm a Sandwich High grad. Not a self-brag, a brag on the Sandwich schools, but I graduated high school as a second semester sophomore in college because of the AP classes that I was able to take at Sandwich High, because of the honors classes that prepared me to be able to test out of a lot of lower level gen eds. That's 2 years of my life. That's tens of thousands
Sure.
of dollars in student debt that I didn't have, and that's a direct product of the Sandwich School. Those same opportunities are available to students now, but I don't know how many of them know that. So I think some parents,
or how to translate it to what it means to me.
Exactly. How
Yeah,
can I
sure.
take advantage of this? And so I think every parent just wants what's best for their kid, and they're seeing opportunities elsewhere, and maybe they don't see the best way to take advantage of the opportunities here in Sandwich.
You said in the information that you sent us, quote, I believe that in order for Sandwich schools to thrive, they need to demonstrate a strong commitment to academic excellence. In your opinion, how far off from academic excellence do you feel the school district is?
Well, if you look at the numbers, as far as meeting grade expectations, Sandwich outperforms the state significantly. So as far as being better than other districts, if that's the metric, Sandwich is doing well. That being said, we're still looking at, in some cases, it's 50 to 60% of students who are meeting grade expectations in math or in English and lower in other things. So I think it's looking at what areas of study maybe can we try to offer more of, and what things that should we offer less of, and are we offering, is there a way to incorporate some things, into specials even, or how can we get math and art connected, and how can we connect, literature, in our art classes, and so these things aren't so segmented. I think that also Sandwich has a really robust honors program and AP program at the high school, and that's a really huge part of that academic excellence piece. It allows students who maybe do have higher academic goals or a more of an academic drive to succeed, while also meeting other students where they're at. So I'm really proud of that, and I want to see that continue.
School safety.
Yeah.
The superintendent received a full study on the efficacy of safety measures in all of the schools recently. 2 questions. Have you seen the results of that study?
I haven't.
Okay. When you look at school safety, you're a parent, and we see horror on TV. My question to you is, do you feel our kids are safe in the Sandwich schools?
I do. And I say that understanding the horror that a lot of parents have experienced. And I say that with a lot of empathy for a lot of parents who are very afraid. And I think it's important. I want to be careful how I say this, because
Sure.
I certainly don't want to downplay anything.
Yeah.
But I actually think that it's actually extremely important that parents and families understand that on the whole, attending school is a safe thing to do. I think sometimes
it should be.
It is, and I think
yeah.
in the media landscape, and again, not to downplay anything that's happened at all, but I think sometimes it can feel like school is an inherently unsafe environment, and that it is as likely as it is not that something terrible is going to happen on any given day. And that's not the statistical reality that we're living in. And again, that's not to downplay anything that's happened, but so on the one hand, I would say I think it's important that families understand that school is safe. It's important that kids know that they're safe going to school.
Yeah.
And
do your kids feel safe?
They do.
Okay.
They do.
Yeah.
And there's an understanding that bad things happen. And we can't control everything. But
Right.
I also think that Sandwich has done a good job at trying to control what it can. We've invested in school resource officers. I know that as awful as it is to think that they have to do this, my kids have participated in lockdown drills. Yeah. And so the schools can't control everything that happens in the outside
Right.
world. But what the schools can do is prepare themselves for the worst. And what I've seen is that they have prepared for that. And there's a lot of larger conversations obviously
Sure.
happening outside, but as far as what the purview of the school committee and the Sandwich schools, what we can do is make sure that we're prepared. And I think that a lot of steps have been taken to make sure that we are.
School facilities. If you're sitting on the school committee, you definitely are going to have a voice in budget and spending. Talk to me a little bit about your take on the condition of our facilities and in general.
Right. So last year we passed the debt exclusion. Obviously that was a large capital plan to take care of some really, really big things that needed to happen in the schools. Mm-hmm. But part of the reason that was necessary is that, frankly, school maintenance had been underfunded for a very long time. And if you've gone into the schools, that's evident. And that's not a slight on any of the building administrators or any of the teachers. But the truth is we have the Oak Ridge School, the Forestdale School, and the high school that you can see it visually aren't being maintained to the level that they should. Yeah. I also personally think that this has a downstream effect on student enrollment.
Who wants to go to a crappy classroom?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
30-year-old carpet.
Absolutely. And when parents come in and they see that the walls haven't been repainted in a very long time, and they see that there's, marks, like they see those things, and it sends a message. Now, that being said,
do they still see that your name is like carved into the bathroom stall?
I made sure that was in there deep. They're going to have to.
That's going to be a big issue to take out.
That's going to be there forever. I think that the debt exclusion and what we've done with the capital plan is a great thing to see the next 5 years. But what I really want to see is us begin to invest more in ongoing building maintenance. I know that that's a concern that the school committee has, and I know that money doesn't grow on trees. That has to come from somewhere. But I do think that concern needs to be taken seriously, and that when we're looking at the yearly budget, it can't just be eventually we need to find funding to maintain the buildings, but nothing's on fire right now. Yeah. I think that we really need to take a serious look at what might we have to cut in order to make sure that these buildings are being maintained at a level that we won't need another debt exclusion in 5 years.
Yeah. You are on the Oak Ridge School Improvement Council.
Yes.
What is that? And what do you do?
That's a great question. So I think it's a newer initiative that they're doing, but basically Principal Hill and a few of the teachers and administrators at Oak Ridge asked for input from a handful of, they put it out to the school, and then a handful of parents took them up on it. So far we basically meet once a month, and we go through and look at different aspects, things like school communication, looking at the portrait of a graduate and how that's implemented, and just finding ways to, for me coming in as a parent, how that can be better communicated, better implemented in the schools, and basically kind of looking at the school's handbook and going through and seeing how we can make that better.
Do you address or does bullying, cyberbullying or bullying in school, does that come up at all with parent discussions, parent meetings? And definitely, what's your thought on that as it relates to you sitting on the school committee?
Right. I think a huge issue, and I know that I've had this discussion with a couple of the administrators, just in casual conversation, but kids have access to a level of technology that's really hard to even get our minds around. Mm-hmm. And so kids are coming in at a lot of varying levels of media sophistication, and cultural knowledge. And that's following kids home. Part of what I would really like to see is some work being done with students on media literacy. One of the things that actually came up at our last school improvement meeting was, as we were looking at Portrait of a Graduate, was talking about this idea of critical thinking, which is one of the things that we want for the students in the district. And basically the ability for a student to look at media output maybe on their phone and understand what's happening there. All of that to say, I think that when students are able to look and to think critically, it changes the way that they interact with the things online. Maybe they can stop and take a pause, and they don't just jump on a bandwagon where they're bullying another student. They're saying something. They can get a better idea of.
So media literacy that's a really important thing. Are you looking at it in the context of interpreting what is pushed to people, or is it how kids are pushing out?
I think it's both. Example, my daughter's on the school bus, which is where every bad thing that's ever happened happens.
It all happened to me.
In my opinion. My child has learned more on the school bus this year than I would ever have thought possible.
I bet.
But no, it's actually fine. But on her bus, there's fourth grade students that have cell phones and have a TikTok account.
Fourth graders with a TikTok account?
Yep.
Dear Lord.
And so these are students that are taking in information, and they're also pushing out information. And some of the things, I don't want to blow up my daughter's spot here, but there's certain things that they've teased her about. And these are not organic ideas that a fourth grader woke up with.
Right.
These are things that they're seeing online. And then they're regurgitating in the schools. And so a way for them to understand that what they're seeing online, this isn't an appropriate way to speak to someone, or this is what this means.
Right.
They're just seeing something and they think it's funny, or their friends or their older siblings think it's funny. But for them to be able to take that in, understand what that actually means, understand how that might feel to someone, and then be able to say, okay, that's not now an appropriate output for me.
Right.
But a lot of them, we live in sort of a meme culture where I see it, I laugh at it, I repeat it.
Right.
And so I think in some ways, when you can teach kids how to think, not what to think, but that process of how to look at something and pull it apart and understand it, then you can really attack, in my opinion, bullying at the root. Because to just say, hey, be nice is one thing, but to get a student to truly understand, oh, this is what I'm communicating, or this is what this idea is a different thing altogether.
And of course, that whole translation to mental illness and being able, in my conversations with the superintendent, there's greater conversations about the need to really focus on mental issues, but not be a psychiatrist without a license. How do you look at mental health in the schools?
So one thing that I actually just learned is that there's certain screeners that they do at the elementary level, and if there's enough, for lack of a better term, flags, then they'll refer that to the school counselor, who then will give a list of mental health resources to parents. Again, I'm not sure how many parents know that that's happening, and that's not anything invasive. That's not, the students aren't being monitored. It's just a little screener like you have at a doctor's office of hey, here's some things, and they're kind of looking for certain information. To me, I think that's probably the biggest thing that can happen at the schools. You don't want teachers or even administrators trying to act as psychiatrists or anything else. But I think that what the schools can do is develop robust relationships with mental health professionals across Cape Cod and even off Cape Cod, because I know that mental health resources, especially for kids, are very, very limited here. But if the schools understand where to refer parents, then they can give them the tools and say, hey, this is someone you can talk to. This is something I think your child might benefit from. This is a program they might be able to do.
Let me ask you this, just as we wrap up, where do you stand on the naming of playgrounds? John Nelson, who was did you know John?
I didn't know him personally. I read the article that came out, and
so my understanding is John was just a remarkable human being, cut short, way too young. But it does bring up that discussion
Right.
of who should we name things after?
Right.
Do you have an opinion on that in any way?
I believe that I believe in celebrating sandwich. I really do. And so I think that if we have someone who meant a lot to this town, who poured into this town, who served this town, and as I understand was a key part in getting these playgrounds built, I think.
And facilities in general.
Right. Who better to name something after that? I mean, rather than someone outside or some national figure or what have you, then I actually think it's a really powerful thing for kids to see this idea of everyday heroes and that somebody doesn't have to be on the news to make a huge impact.
I think I'm still waiting for the Anderson playground, the Greg Anderson
it's
playground.
Coming. I believe in it.
You need to. Kaleigh Adams, thank you so much for coming in. Hopefully this was a good time.
I didn't pass out. I'm calling it a win.
That is a win. That is a win. You, my friends, I hope you vote. You can write in, you can call in, you can mail in, you can do anything you want before May 4th, but definitely at a minimum, go and vote on May 4th. I'll see you soon, Sandwich.